It was a Tuesday, just a regular Tuesday, or so I thought. Little did I know, this particular Tuesday would etch itself into my memory, not for any grand event, but for the unsettling stillness that descended upon my mind. I remember the day with a strange clarity, a clarity born not of vivid detail, not because anything remarkable happened, no extraordinary event took place, but because everything felt so blank, utterly, disconcertingly blank. Like a channel had been switched, and all that was left was static. I was in my kitchen, the heart of our home, kettle whistling its familiar tune, mug in hand, the steam curling upwards like a question mark, when my wife, Anjali, asked what I wanted for dinner. A simple question, a daily ritual. I opened my mouth, ready to answer with my usual predictable craving, but the words just weren't there. They were lost, vanished, as if a vital connection had been severed. It felt like my mind had been ransacked, a mental burglary, thoughts scattered like leaves in a storm, blown to the far corners of my consciousness. The connection between thought and speech offline. The words were there, somewhere, but I couldn't access them. I stood there, silent, a statue in my own kitchen, confusion washing over me as I stared at the steam, the swirling vapor, a mocking reminder of the thoughts I couldn't grasp. This wasn't just a memory lapse, a fleeting moment of forgetfulness. It was a thick gray fog rolling into my head, an unwelcome guest settling in for a long stay, muffling sounds, like cotton wool stuffed in my ears, blurring thoughts, making them indistinct and hazy, slowing everything to a crawl. Time seemed to stretch and distort, each moment an eternity. At work, I reread patient notes, struggling to comprehend the familiar medical jargon, forgot names, faces blurred into anonymity, and lost my train of thought mid-sentence, leaving conversations hanging in the air, unfinished. The world felt distant, muted, as if I was watching my own life through a smudged lens, unable to fully connect with the reality around me. That evening I couldn't follow the TV plot, the narrative threads tangled and incomprehensible. The mental effort was too much, a Herculean task to simply process information. I felt isolated inside my own head, trapped, a prisoner of a mind that no longer felt like my own, a stranger in a familiar land. That Tuesday, I realized I couldn't ignore the fog any longer. This wasn't a temporary glitch. It was a serious problem. I had to find a way out, a path through the fog, before it consumed me completely. The days that followed blurred into a monotonous gray, each one indistinguishable from the last. The vibrancy of life seemed to have been muted, leaving behind a dull echo of what once was. It was as if I was watching the world through a thick, clouded lens. The brain fog became my constant, invisible companion, a relentless presence that shadowed every thought and action. It was like wading through thick mud, each step requiring immense effort. Outwardly, I was still a doctor, fulfilling my duties and responsibilities. Husband, committed to my marriage and partner. Father, present for my children, or so I tried to be. Inside, I was lost in confusion, adrift in a sea of uncertainty. My thoughts were jumbled, and clarity felt like a distant shore. Simple tasks became monumental, each one requiring a Herculean effort to complete. Writing a prescription took intense concentration, a battle against the fog that clouded my mind. It was a struggle to recall even the most basic medical knowledge. My confidence eroded, chipped away by the constant struggle, replaced by anxiety that I was no longer capable, that I was failing in every aspect of my life. The fear of inadequacy loomed large. Conversations with Anjali became difficult, strained by my inability to fully engage. I'd lose my train of thought, leaving awkward silences that hung heavy in the air. I could see the concern in her eyes, a silent question of what was happening to me. I felt guilty, physically present, going through the motions but mentally absent, lost in my own internal world. Hobbies became chores, joyless obligations that I couldn't muster the energy for. Reading felt impossible. The words swam on the page, refusing to form coherent thoughts. I scrolled my phone for mindless distraction, seeking fleeting moments of escape from the relentless fog. I was living in a state of mental exhaustion, constantly drained and depleted. Every thought felt heavy, every decision a burden, a monumental task that weighed me down. The frustration was the worst part, the gnawing feeling of being trapped within my own mind. I was a doctor. I should be able to fix myself, to diagnose and treat whatever was afflicting me. I tried coffee, powering through, desperately seeking a jolt of energy and clarity, telling myself it was just stress, a temporary setback that I could overcome with sheer willpower. But this was different. This felt deeper, more profound. It was a deep, pervasive cognitive impairment, a fog that had settled over my mind and refused to lift. Beyond my control, a force that I couldn't fight with my usual tools and strategies. I felt helpless, and honestly a little hopeless, trapped in a cycle of mental exhaustion and frustration. The sharp, energetic man I knew seemed to be fading away, a ghost of his former self. Lost in a fog I couldn't navigate, a labyrinth of confusion and uncertainty. I needed a way out, a lifeline to pull me from this darkness, but I didn't know where to start or who to turn to. One evening, feeling utterly defeated by the persistent mental fog that clouded my thoughts, I found myself aimlessly flipping through old medical textbooks, seeking some semblance of comfort in their familiar pages. It was a late night, and exhaustion was setting in. I stumbled upon a section on neuroplasticity and the profound impact of lifestyle choices on brain health. The concepts were familiar, things I already knew, but they struck me with a sudden and urgent relevance, resonating in a way they hadn't before. The science was clear, but I wasn't applying it to myself. I paused, closed the book, and asked myself, what's the one single actionable thing I'm consciously avoiding? The one thing I know deep down I should be doing for my health, both mental and physical. What change could I make today? The answer, when it finally surfaced, was almost comical in its simplicity. I simply wasn't moving enough. My life had become overwhelmingly sedentary. More specifically, I wasn't getting outside and walking in the morning, breathing in the fresh air and greeting the day with movement. My days had devolved into a relentless rush, a blur from home to car to practice, where I would then be sitting for hours on end, focused intently on my work. And my brain, starved of oxygen and movement, was undoubtedly paying the price for my neglect. The solution, I realized, might not lie in a pill, in some external chemical intervention, but rather in the simple act of using my own 2 feet to reconnect with the world. A simple morning walk. It sounded almost ridiculously basic, almost too simple to be effective. But the more I turned the idea over in my mind, the more profoundly it resonated, the more sense it began to make. It wasn't just about exercise, about ticking off another item on a to-do list. It was something more fundamental. It was light, the gentle awakening of the sun, air, the crisp, clean breath of a new day, rhythm, the steady grounding cadence of my own footsteps, and, perhaps most importantly, a deliberate and conscious act of self-care, a commitment to nurturing my well-being. No expensive gym membership required, no complicated equipment to master, just open the door and walk. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a faint but undeniable flicker of hope ignite within me. I had a plan, a simple but potentially transformative plan, a 15-minute walk every single morning. No excuses, no exceptions. I would reclaim my mornings, steal them back from the clutches of fatigue and obligation, and in doing so, perhaps begin to reclaim my mind as well. I set my alarm for a time that felt almost offensively early, carefully laid out my walking clothes, a silent promise to myself, and went to sleep with a newfound sense of purpose, a feeling I hadn't experienced in quite some time. The fog of mental exhaustion and uncertainty was still there, a persistent presence, but now, within that fog, I could see a tiny pinprick of light, a beacon of hope guiding me forward. The alarm went off at 6. It was dark and cold, and every part of me wanted to stay in bed. But I remembered the helplessness of the day before and forced myself up. I dressed quietly, laced my trainers, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the world peaceful. I started walking, no destination in mind. The rhythm of my footsteps was meditative. I listened to the morning, birds, leaves, my own breathing. For 5 minutes, my mind was noisy, the fog persistent. I felt clumsy and slow. But as my body warmed up, my mind began to quieten. The fog didn't vanish, but it thinned a little. I noticed the sunrise, the breeze, my surroundings. By the time I returned, 15 minutes later, I felt calmer, more grounded, and surprisingly alert. It wasn't a miracle cure, but it was a real change. I'd done something for myself, and it felt good. That small act was the first crack in the fog. I was ready to try again tomorrow. What was happening in my brain during that walk? It's not magic, it's biology. Rhythmic exercise like walking releases brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF, a kind of fertilizer for the brain. BDNF helps repair neurons, build new connections, and boost neuroplasticity. Morning light resets our circadian rhythm, improving sleep and energy. Walking increases blood flow, delivering oxygen and nutrients to brain cells, clearing away mental cobwebs. The gentle motion calms the nervous system, reducing stress hormones like cortisol. It also boosts serotonin and dopamine, natural mood elevators and focus enhancers. My morning walk wasn't just exercise. It was moving meditation, reducing stress and sharpening my mind. Each step was pushing back the fog. The science was simple, but the impact was profound. The first walk was a start, but consistency was the real challenge. The next day it rained. I went anyway, and the sense of accomplishment was even greater. Some days I walked 20 minutes, others just 5. The key was doing it every day. After a week, I noticed changes. I felt more awake and alert after my walk, needing less coffee. The morning fog lifted earlier. I could plan my day with clarity. 3 weeks in, I handled a complex patient case with ease. Details flowed, connections clicked, confidence returned. I felt like myself again, sharp, focused, present. At home, I had more energy in the evenings. I listened to Anjali, read books, and even walked with her on weekends. The fog was no longer a barrier between us. I was more present, engaged, and happier. That one small step each morning had become a giant leap forward. The transformation was real, and it started with a simple walk. I was reclaiming my mind, one step at a time. The fog was lifting. I was back. Making my morning walk non-negotiable took more than willpower. It took strategy. First, I prepared. Every night, I laid out my clothes and shoes. No friction in the morning. Second, I used habit stacking. After brushing my teeth, I'd put on my shoes and go outside. This automatic trigger made the walk part of my routine. Third, I started small. My goal was just 5 minutes. Anyone can do that. Once I was out, I often walked longer, but even a short walk kept the habit alive. Consistency mattered more than duration. Finally, I embraced imperfection. If I missed a day, I never missed twice. Life happens, but one slip-up didn't derail me. It wasn't about perfection, it was about persistence. These simple tools turned my walk from an experiment into a lifelong habit. The key was making it easy, automatic, and forgiving. That's how real change sticks. Today, my morning walk is as natural as brewing tea. I look forward to it, a cherished part of my day. The brain fog that once dominated my life has lifted. I still have tired days, but the chronic confusion is gone. At work, I'm more creative, engaged, and effective. I solve problems better, connect with patients, and feel renewed purpose. At home, I'm present for my family, with energy for play and conversation. The walk cleared my head and opened my heart. The brain fog was a harsh gift. It forced me to rediscover the power of simple daily movement. One small habit gave me my life back. If you feel trapped in mental fog, you're not alone, and there's a clear path forward. You don't need drastic changes. Start with a single, simple step. Try a 5-minute walk each morning for a week. Don't worry about speed or distance. Just get outside. Lay out your clothes the night before. Stack the walk onto an existing habit. Notice how you feel afterwards. See it as an act of kindness to yourself. Be patient and compassionate. Building a habit takes time. The goal isn't perfection. It's persistence. Celebrate small wins. The rainy day you walked. The first time the fog thins. Each step rewires your brain and reclaims your health. This is more than a habit. It's a new way of living. I hope my story sparks a little light for you. Share your journey in the comments. Your story could inspire someone else. It's your turn to walk into the light.